Welcome to the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with Operation Smile. To find out how to support this cause, please visit our website at emearecruitment.com/operation-smile. In this episode, we welcome Denis Ranke, the CFO, COO at tech scale-up Xovis. He discusses how he thinks outside the box of finance to add value to decision-making in the business.
So, hello everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the EMEA Recruitment Podcast in partnership with Operation Smile. As my good colleague Rose has mentioned, we're delighted to welcome Denis onto the podcast today. So hopefully you can hear me okay, Denis?
I can hear you perfectly. Hi, everyone.
All right. Well, it's great to have you as a guest on the show today. I know we've got a lot of good questions to go through, some of which have come from our network internally, some externally. So hopefully it won't be too challenging for you, but it should be interesting at the same time with a bit of luck.
Thank you. I give my best.
So, I mean, obviously we're recording this at the start of December 2021. And I think it is very difficult really to have these conversations at the current time without touching on the whole challenge that everybody has been through in the whole COVID situation. But rather than look at the negatives of the whole period that we've been through, I'll try to put a more of a positive angle on it and maybe ask the guests, what is the thing you've learned or developed over the whole COVID period that you might be able to pass on to the network to learn from?
What I have learned is how to deal with the situation that you sit the whole day in your home office, at the desk, in video calls. And I try to get a routine into it that changes the situations. For instance, having a call when taking a walk, not just all the time just sitting, but also stand up, change the positions, change from the home office to the dining room, and so that there is also, like in normal work, some kind of movement and change in your surrounding. I think from a mental perspective, that's very, very important. And I also give these kind of recommendations to other people that after this long 20 months or whatever this pandemic now lasts, had to go through similar experiences.
No, I agree. I mean, one of the things that I did at the start of this whole situation, I invested in a standing desk, and I've done a lot of research into it, into the benefits of having it from an energy point of view. But I also feel it's helped a lot. You know, if you're just sitting down at home all day, then actually it can be quite draining, and you're not getting the exercise that your brain needs to function properly and to give you the energy. So it's definitely, I agree. It's one of the things that I looked at and seen benefit from on that side. And I mean, obviously, you know, I mentioned at the start of the conversation that the show is in partnership with Operation Smile. So before we really go into the list of questions about your background and career, I thought I'd ask maybe a light-hearted one to start you off with, Denis. So given that it's in partnership with Operation Smile, what was the last thing that made you smile?
Actually, it was this morning when I was doing the routine, getting my daughter ready for daycare. So often that isn't too much fun in the morning, but this morning I just took an extra 5 minutes to read a little book from her Christmas calendar. And whilst I was pretending to read, I adjusted the story with some funny anecdotes, which made the whole family, including me, smile. So she didn't realize that I was adjusting the story, but for me and my wife, it was quite funny, and we had big smiles on our faces.
That's always good, especially if the whole family is laughing as well. That's a good way to start the day. Because how old is your daughter?
She's 4, and as you know, at 4, sometimes you have these phases, and the morning routine is not always the most fun. But today, these extra 5 minutes, I mean, almost made the day, huh?
No, that's great to hear. And I think maybe linking these two things we've been talking about together, I mean, obviously, I think, you know, the working from home side of things has been a challenge for everybody, but especially people who have children of that age, you know, and have a high profile job and expectations in work as well. I mean, how did you deal with the the challenges of the focus of your role and the priorities of your role, because it's difficult to balance looking after a 4-year-old daughter, your family, as well as satisfying the needs of the colleagues around you as well. So is there any kind of way you balance that out to make sure you were keeping everybody happy?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and it's a challenge at the same time. And the challenge, I mean, there is no ultimate solution, right? The recommendation that I have is get out of the routine sometimes, take a break, take a breathe, leave the house, take a walk, meet with friends, and whilst having a family will give you a lot in such times, it's also important to have other inputs from the outside to be more balanced at the inside, right? And that's another big learning, especially in these times with lots of home office working from home and being sometimes even a bit isolated.
No, that is true. I mean, I think it's trying to get the balance right as much as possible. I mean, it's obviously a challenge to do that on a daily basis, but I agree. I think you're somebody who has a track record maybe of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and doing different things. And I mean, obviously, one of the things you've done fairly recently is change roles. So there's maybe a small percentage of people over the last 20 months have changed positions over this time and changed companies. So, I mean, how did you find that experience, going through the whole interview process remotely, I guess, most of it, so compared to when you were on the interview processes for your previous positions?
Yeah, that was indeed quite interesting because it is kind of a crucial role in a tech scale up. And during the process, there was just one face-to-face touch point, which was part of the decision-making process. I mean, there was another one at the very end to wrap up, but most of the conversations have been via video calls, and it's a bit of a challenge. I mean, yes, we are used to it, but at the same time, especially in such important conversations, there's a lot that you don't see in a video call, right? You don't have the feeling on who and what exactly the person is that you are talking to. You don't feel the energy in the room. You don't see, okay, where is this person coming from? Is this person coming, I don't know, from lunch or just out of a difficult meeting, right? It's like the start of a scene in which you don't exactly understand where is the person you're talking to coming from right now. And that's why you need to ask a lot of extra questions or prepare even differently for these kind of interviews to understand who is the person that I'm going to talk to.
No, it's true. I think it changes the approach for individuals to prepare for interviews, but we've seen it's changed the approach in the way that companies hire people and the whole recruitment process. I think, well, I know that something you value very highly is integrity, and I think integrity and trust is another key part of it. So I think there's more emphasis put on integrity and trust now than probably what there was 20 months ago, because you're now in a situation where you're not with someone physically day in, day out. So you have to trust somebody, and that trust element is something that is, I think it's examined a lot more by companies now, but it is also something that should be on people's minds when they are, going on interviews over on a remote basis. But I mean, obviously you've been in this role now for a few months now. So, I mean, how does it feel to be the CFO or COO at Xovis at the moment?
It feels good. And for me, it feels like I now landed something that I always wanted to do. So one point here to add is I'm not an educated finance professional. So I didn't start my career in finance. My first degree is in engineering, and that's how I started. And then via consulting and an MBA, I ended up in finance, and that was also not a master plan. That happened a bit by coincidence. And but at the end of the day, it served my desire to be closer to decision making, and at the same time leverage data to analyze business situations and to find improvements and to deliver a plan, right? So that's still a lot of commonalities within engineer, but in a different professional environment. And that said, I'm not an auditor. I'm rather a data-driven person who is not just making sure that the 3 financial statements are correct. So instead, I look left and right all the time to get ahead of the curve, to influence my business partners, to get more of the finance function, and to serve our customers. So for me, that's important that it doesn't end with the 3 financial statements. So there's more than just cash and the balance sheet. It's important and it's crucial. And when it's not working, then you have a problem. But my aim is always to get the finance basics under control as quick as you can, and then to find value out of the finance, and now also with operational functions that go far beyond purely finance-driven activities. And I can give you an example or a few examples from the first few months at Xovis. So whilst, yes, it was tough spending most of my time at eBay and corporate finance functions, country roles, regional roles, quite a lot of responsibility, but responsibility in a big corporate. So now in a tech scale-up, private equity owned, so that's a whole different world, right? So there is no safety net. There is not someone else who will cover for you if you miss your plan. So that's just you, right? There is no excuse. And here I had to focus for 3 months to get the basics under control. I mean, I have to say I have an excellent team, right? So without that team, I wouldn't be able to focus time and my energy outside of finance. But due to the fact that the team is great and that they deliver above their standards, I was also able, for instance, to trigger or introduce NPS as a customer metric. So we analyzed it. So we said we are a customer-focused company, but we didn't analyze or measure what it actually means. How does success look like? And now we just launched the first NPS survey, and I was driving or triggering that. I mean, at the end, it was executed by the marketing team, but I was very close to it. Another example is, we have 2 big businesses, right? So an airports business, which wasn't doing that well during the crisis, but the second big business is retail, and that business went through the roof during the crisis because people movement counting, thresholding, and all other kinds of analyzing people data is the new trend. And I was really getting into the weeds of a major project in the airports area, which wasn't progressing. And now it looks like that we have turned that around. So all I want to say is that there is a lot in finance that you see that is not going well, that you see that you've seen differently, better. So, but rather than complaining or pointing at something, my approach is to dig in and make an impact yourself, right? And that's why for me that it's the perfect combination: a CF role or an extended CFO role with a lot of operational responsibility.
Hi everybody, it's Paul Thomas here. I hope that you're well and you're enjoying the podcast so far. Thank you once again for your continued support listening to the podcast. I just wanted to break into the recording to talk to you about a really exciting new partnership that EMEA Recruitment has along with Operation Smile. And as founder of EMEA Recruitment, it's an honour and a privilege to announce this partnership. Personally, I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so the mission of Operation Smile is something that I have a strong personal connection with. It's not an understatement to say that the dentists and surgeons that helped me were life changers. It's not only about the actual operations that take place, the support and care post and pre-operation are beyond value, and from personal experience I can only say that I'd not be the confident, happy person I am today without this support. I want to help children experience the support and care and skill that I experienced on my journey, and hope that we can do this along with Operation Smile. Every 3 minutes, a child is born with a cleft lip or cleft palate, and the mission of Operation Smile is to provide help and support to these children through providing 6,000 medical volunteers across 80 countries who are dedicated to help these children with facial conditions, most commonly cleft lip and cleft palate. More than 200,000 children are born with a cleft every year, and they are often unable to speak, eat, socialise or even smile. However, it can take as little as 45 minutes and cost just €180 or 180 Swiss francs for Operation Smile to provide a child with life-changing surgery. Now, in partnership with Operation Smile, EMEA Recruitment is raising valuable funds and aiming to create 100 new smiles to support the organisation to provide free surgeries for children and young adults all over the world. Please help us by donating through the link in the bio or get in touch to see how your company can help get involved too. For the moment, I'll leave you to carry on listening to the rest of the podcast, but if there's anything I can do in terms of answering any questions or finding out how you can help and support EMEA Recruitment and Operation Smile, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you once again and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
No, it's really interesting because I think probably a theme that runs through the answers to the last question, Denis, was that a lot around the business partnering side. I mean, I know that finance business partnering is something that's that drives you, that you enjoy doing, and I think everything you mentioned there. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to having that commercial mindset and being a strong finance business partner, and it's such a commonly used phrase in job titles and descriptions these days. You know, finance business partnering is a big part of the role and so on, and everybody wants to do that type of role. But what does it really mean to you? I mean, what is the core to your success, do you think, as a strong finance business partner?
I mean, related to the answer I just give, I mean, my focus is, I mean, by far not just the financials, right? In my interpretation of business partnering, right? So financial work is important. That's the basics, right? But the real value for me is coming from understanding the world and the problems and the situation of your business partners, right? So what's their strategy? What are their challenges? What is going well for them? How can we support out of the finance functions? And in most situations, either at eBay or at this other company I was afterwards, or now at Xovis, there were always instances in which, as a finance partner, I was able to show, hey, I can make your life easier, and I'm not just the one who is asking for, I don't know, forecast information or explanation of actual business results around month end or quarter end and close, right? There is much more to it, and I would say 50% is again here the finance basics, and then 50% is driving upside in all sorts of other areas.
I mean, it's interesting because I know your background is quite unique, I would say. I mean, obviously with the companies that you work within, having had a number of years at eBay, which obviously US-owned business and has quite a heavy US culture, and then move to your next company, which was obviously a Swiss-owned business, and now working for a private equity company. That very different cultures and individuals and ways of working. So, do you think that your approach, the understanding of the business partners, trying to make an impact, and your style as a business partner, do you think that's what's enabled your success across these varied cultures? Because it's not, you usually find that people find it's quite difficult to move from a US multinational to a Swiss-owned business, then to a PE, so it's not the typical career path. So what do you think the reason for that, the continued success in these different areas has been?
I think there is, so each of the stages equipped me with certain skills and experiences that helped in a very nice way to build on each other, right? So absolutely right. When you are in one of these big tech giants, US-based, then you are part of something that's very strong. And I mentioned earlier, there basically you function within a matrix, right? And make an impact there. You have ultra smart people around you, a specialist and a PhD for almost every topic that you can think of. And so you see the whole day in and day out how good or very good looks like. Then taking the next step, then going, let's say to a Swiss-owned corporate like Dieter Keller was. So similar complexity, also 5,000 employees, right, and all kinds of business units. I mean, it helped to know how a big machine is working, or how a big machine can be successful. And there, basically, I was the one in the headquarter, and I was working with the operational units through the different cycles of the year, and also the COVID crisis when it was hitting us. But what I learned there was to be basically at the center, and to have all the touch points that you don't have when you are in the, let's say, in a European division of a US company, right? It's everything: discussions with banks, with law firms, with auditors, or all sorts of other external stakeholders that you usually are not exposed to when you are in a very big corporate, but yet you are exposed to when you are on the headquarter or in a standalone business. I mean, that added on nicely and prepared me for that job in this tech scale-up that is private equity owned. So, I mean, I was in situations when I said, hey, one day I want to do this, but then I realized, okay, I don't tick that box, I don't tick that box. But I learned then on this at DTime Color after eBay how to tick these boxes, right? How to manage cash in tight situations, right? Cash is king these days, right? And we all know that. Everyone who was in businesses that were affected by the crisis knows how important it is to have your cash under control. And I think the combination equipped me then and to take this full scope CFO plus operational job at Xovis, and I'm more than happy that it played out so nicely, and I had got the chance to be in that current job.
Yeah, I mean, that leads me on quite nicely to another question I had, actually, because I know you mentioned earlier that you didn't set out necessarily to go into finance, and it's something that we tend to find with the majority of people. They don't necessarily choose their career; the career chooses them. And you mentioned a bit about the circumstances moving you in the direction of finance. I just wondered if you'd be able to go into a bit more detail on that, because it's quite interesting. It's always interesting to see how people make this decision that then impacts the next 20, 30, 40 years of their lives, So what was it that pushed you in the direction of finance in the first place?
It was, at the end, for me, I'm close to the decision-making process on things that move a business, change a business, or drive change, right? I was in consulting, I was part of change projects, but I got the feeling that the ultimate decisions are taken in areas of the business that I was partly exposed to only. And my desire was to get closer there, right? To not just prepare data that helps decision-making, but to be part of the decision-making process yourself. And that was the desire, and my strength dealing with data, packaging data and driving decisions with data helped me at the end to be part of that, to become part of that process at eBay, at DTime Color, and now ultimately at Xovis.
And touching on the subjects of data, and I know throughout the podcast so far, one of the things that's obvious is that you've taken moves to continue your learning, your developments, to be in the decision-making position, and obviously, you mentioned the data side of things there as well. And I think one of the things that's going to push people to other areas maybe, and be challenges for people in any discipline, really, I guess, in the future, is the impact of BI and data. So I thought I'd ask you the question around that, really. I mean, how you feel BI and data is going to impact the finance function in the future?
It will impact that in big ways. I mean, everyone who is working in finance knows that, you will never have the perfect systems around you, right? There will always be something that is not properly working. So you have to bridge and have to fix and adjust manually and so on. So that's what I call the basics again. Then BI and data in, let's say, in a value adding or in a more value adding way is not just a collection of internal metrics. It's also, again, looking left and right, combining internal data points with external data points, For instance, to better understand your customers, to read trends in the market, and in the best way to create predictions that help to manage your financial KPI at the end of the day. So again, here for me, it's thinking out of the box of finance, using tools, leveraging data, but always ask yourself the question: what action do you want to drive with an insight or with the data that you collect, right? Because I mean, in this world these days, I mean, there's so much data around you cannot consume and process everything that's on your table. So really, you need to focus on the ones where you can move something and not just on everything that gets on your table.
No, interesting. And I mean, I think one of the things that the majority of people agree on is that no matter where BI and data goes and how big it becomes, you still need the humans around to add the real value to analysing the data and, as you say, to make the decisions at the end of the day. And I know, teamwork, developing people, working with people either as a manager or business partner is something very, very close to your heart. So I wondered, from the experience you've had, what has been the best way you found to develop people to become, let's say, the best version of themselves?
I mean, it always starts with getting to know and understanding your team, right? So, I mean, as mentioned before, that is a bit of a challenge if you only and just work remote. But luckily, especially the first months of my new job, I was able to spend a lot of time with my team, understand what they do, how they do it, and then what I always, again, thanks to eBay and these big tech companies that are often ahead of the curve, I would say, in terms of management styles. I mean, I see myself as a coach rather than a military style leader, right? So for me, it's important that people or team members are not just coming with problems to me, but always come with a recommendation, right? And I want to enable my team, give instant feedback, and at the same time, getting my people out of their comfort zone, because I believe in the potential of that everyone has, or everyone that came to a certain place or to a position. And then I try to find the trigger points that are different for everyone to get the team to their best potential, right? And there I always try to apply concepts, right, that I learned or on certain trainings or experiences that help my team also to better understand their impact to the business or to the dynamics of certain teams around us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with that management style, and I know we talked about people and we talked about BI and data. I mean, and with the way that you manage or let's say coach people, as you mentioned, I mean, how do you think that will, well, let's say, what challenges do you think there will be in keeping that management style when more and more data becomes available on individuals and their performance? Because I guess one of the challenges will be that an individual will have certain KPIs to hit, and it will be difficult to ignore the KPIs that BI and data can bring through. So do you see that the role of a coach or manager will become more into the data, or do you feel that this way of working you have now is something that will override the amount of data that you'll have at your fingertips in the future?
Yes, it is. I mean, that's definitely a challenge. And I would say it's maybe a bit more of a challenge in these very big tech companies, right? I mean, as mentioned before, there is an overload of data. There is an overload of KPIs, OKRs, and all sorts of other metrics that define success or failure. And what's for me always very important, or what I found helpful, is if you try to take a step back and grasp the big picture. So why is this metric important for the customer? Why is this metric important for the business? Or why is this metric important for my stakeholders? And then with that big picture, you have to then prioritize and then also say, okay, but in this situation, this metric is more important. And in this situation, maybe we have here conflicting metrics, and the discussion should not be about the accuracy of certain information, rather about the trade-offs that we have to make. And here I'm always trying to help my team to get to that big picture, trying or helping them to understand how does their part of let's say the big machine fits into the big engine of the company, right? Because often that's underestimated, and people think, oh, if we optimize just this one metric, then everything will be fine. But that's unfortunately not the case, because moving one metric often means you trade off other metrics, and then the business result at the end, when you add up everything in finance, shows you, so well, whilst this one metric was improved and there we hit the goals, that the business outcome is not what it should be.
No, it's interesting, and I think a strong metric, using your term there, behind the success of managers, of individuals, and also how successful BI and data is used, is actually having great people around you and bringing great people into the team in as a starting point. And clearly we can't really have you as a guest on the recruitment podcast without touching on the subject of people and recruitment. But I guess the question I was going to ask you was around your experience from recruiting people. I mean, are there any ways you found over the years that make a recruitment process more efficient and effective?
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, it's related to effort. I mean, I guess you know that, because if you want to find the best fit for a certain role, then I think you have to go through a process to understand your customer, right? And I mean, you not just have to understand the company, the strategy, its mission, the journey they are on, the challenges, and the leader, and the team, and the strength and the weaknesses. There's much more, and you need to think ahead to not just find the person that is meeting a certain sets of requirements, but also someone who is willing and able to take the next step or the next few steps in the company, in the team, to make your customer or the relationship successful. Maybe it's a bit similar to the coaching concept that I mentioned earlier, right? So recruiting for me is not just a profession. I see it successful when it's a journey, a relationship that's similar to consulting or coaching, to then find someone or find the right person that will then at the end go far and beyond what you had in mind initially as a customer. And very often we found ourselves that at the beginning of recruiting processes, so we had a profile in mind, but when we finished the search or when we found the right person, the profile was a different one, right? And reducing that gap between starting point and ultimate profile that is successful, I think that is, to me, that's the highest achievement or the biggest success criteria in a recruitment process.
No, it's right. I mean, from the experience I've had, I think everything you mentioned there is spot on. I think it's so much down to the cultural fit, the fit with the manager, the fit with the team, and the right attitude and approach, because the ins and outs of the day job, large amounts can be taught and learned, I guess, relatively swiftly. But if the fit isn't there from a cultural and manager side, then it's going to be hard to get that relationship with them as a manager or coach. That then we see so many times over the years that the person who ends up getting a role is quite far away from the person that the company started out thinking they were going to hire. And I think it does come down to that, the cultural and personal fit, as you mentioned. And I mean, I think obviously recruitment is a very small percentage of your day job. And I thought, I was at an event fairly recently, and someone asked me a question. I thought, this is quite a good question to ask our guests on the podcast about recruitment. So I thought, I mean, how does recruitment actually make you feel? Is it something you enjoy, or is it something you do because it's a means to an end? I mean, so I thought I'd ask you really how the whole recruitment process makes you feel.
Good question. I mean, sometimes, I mean, there are certain situations that bring you into or to force you into a recruitment process. I mean, number one, someone is leaving your team and you need to replace it. I would say, okay, that's more what you have to do. What I enjoy and like much more, if your business is growing and you grow your team, you grow responsibility, and you expand your team and with new talent, right? So that's maybe the more exciting part of it. I mean, and also again the separation. Okay, have to do and okay, this is now the part where the fun starts. And similar to something that I have mentioned before, I like surprises, right? I like positive surprises from my partners that I'm working with, right? I love to see my partners in recruiting to make proposals, thinking out of the box and to bring something to the table that wasn't top of mind for me or my colleagues at the beginning of the process. Because this is exactly what I mentioned earlier. So sometimes when you are within a certain bubble and don't have the full big picture, then I think as a recruitment partner, you can play a very important role in shedding light to that situation.
No, it's interesting. I think, you're the first person I've asked this question to on the podcast, and it's brought an interesting answer. So I might start using this question to some of the future guests as well, because it's not an easy one to answer. But then I guess neither is my next one either. And it's a bit, hopefully it's not too much of a loaded question, given you're speaking to a recruiter. But I mean, how does working with recruiters make you feel?
Very good question. I mean, I can say I enjoy this conversation a lot because it's different to the conversations that I have normally day in or day out. No, I like it. I like it because it always brings a perspective that and insights that I don't have in my job. Right. I mean, the strength or the value from you comes from the broad level and set of customers that you are working with, right? So you are talking to customers that are in a journey of change, in a journey of growth, right? And so for me, the big value is that it gives me the chance to benefit from that insight and to benefit from your network, right? That are my expectations, and that's also when it's working that I enjoy most in working with recruiters.
No, it's interesting. You mentioned the network there, and I think it's such a key part of the process, especially as now more and more companies go down the route of, say, LinkedIn or other platforms to promote their jobs and to use that as the main source of finding people. And LinkedIn definitely has a place in a recruitment process, but it's one of those things that actually, what it doesn't help with is what we were talking about earlier about the cultural fit, the drivers and ambitions of an individual and matching them with the drivers of the manager or the team and getting that fit. And so whilst I think it can be a very useful platform, I still think the best way of recruiting is almost the old-fashioned way, and actually having the network for yourself, but for us or any external recruiter as well, to utilize and hopefully make the process that much smoother because the fit is better as well. So I think it's good to hear your thoughts on that side of things. And I thought, obviously we talked a lot about the growth through your career and the developments that you've had. And so I thought I'd end the podcast really on asking around what you've got lined up more long term. I mean, do you have any long-term goals that you really are looking to achieve?
I mean, there's there's a very easy answer, right? I mean, in this company that I've joined, we have a very ambitious growth plan, and I want to hit that and support it with my best possible effort above and beyond finance. And that is a good challenge for the next 3 to 5 years. if that will be successful, then everything is open.
Well, it's been great speaking to you today, Denis. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been really insightful going through your career path, what you've learned over the years, and how you got there. I think it's, as I said before, I think it's a very unique journey, starting from the engineering background, moving you into finance, working in all these different cultures. And I think, you've highlighted that the decision making and making an impact has been a key area that you've wanted to focus on, and it's clear you've kept that focus through the large part of your career and the decisions you made. So very inspiring for other people to hear this. So, obviously, if any of our network wants to reach out to you, what's the best way they can do that, Denis?
We said before that LinkedIn is not the ultimate tool for everything, but for that purpose, it's quite good, right? I'm quite responsive there, and the benefit there is also when someone is contacting you, you get a picture and some, let's say, background of the person that you are talking to. So that's perfectly fine.
Excellent. So perfect. Well, when we put the podcast online, we'll make sure we add the LinkedIn profile so it's easy for the people to connect with you. And I guess all that's left to say is huge thanks, Denis. Obviously, have a good holiday season, and we'll reconnect in the new year.
Thank you for the time and for the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Perfect. Thanks, Denis. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. If you'd like to reach out to Paul or myself, please feel free to send a connection through on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to listen to previous episodes of the podcast, you can find them all at our website, www.emearecruitment.eu.